12.4 uses a new method for solving a triangle, which is called the law of sines. So why does the law of sines exist? Because everything in life is not a right triangle. If you have a right triangle, then you can always label your opposite, your hypotenuse, your adjacent, and then use self-color. So it's all fine and dandy if you have a right triangle. It's all fine and dandy if you have a right triangle. If you do not have a right triangle, so any triangle that doesn't have a right angle in it is called an oblique triangle. An oblique triangle just doesn't have a right angle in it. You can still solve it, it just doesn't have a right angle in it. So if we don't have right triangle trig to use, we need other things to use. So those two methods are known as law of sines and law of cosines. Just because someone will think of it in math, there is no such thing as a law of tangents. Law of sines, law of cosines, there's no such thing as a law of tangents. So which method you use depends on the information that you're given. So today we will go through the criteria for law of sines. On Tuesday of next week, we'll do the criteria for law of cosines. That Monday, we're going to spend time finding area of a triangle. So there's other ways to find an area of a triangle other than 1/2 base times height. That's what we're doing on Monday. So then the other key point before we start with the law of sines, when you label your triangle, we're not going to use opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. Why? Because we don't have a right triangle. Those three are for right triangles. For any other triangle, we label it using the letter. So, early in section 12.1, I reminded you that capital letters represent angles. Lowercase letters, I swear, Melania, don't get off that phone.
This is Jillian, really?
Oh, go. Jillian, get off the phone.
So you can come in person.
Yeah, that's what happens when you don't confuse. But yeah, and stay off that phone as much as you was complaining about that quiz grade. So
You've been on that all morning. What's wrong with you? Why you just called me out because it's on my phone? You called me in my class earlier. That was so embarrassing.
Don't worry, I do that during the regular school year too. The easiest way to shut me up, do what you're supposed to do.
Why? You don't never shut up.
You do what you're supposed to do, then I'm not even going to call. Anyway, Carla, don't let me call your mama. So, A side is across from the A angle. So wherever the A angle is, the A side is directly across from it. B side, B angle, C side, C angle. So when you go to label, which we will in a second, that's how you label the triangle. Do not use opposite, do not use hypotenuse, do not use adjacent. Those don't apply. Unless you have a right triangle, those don't apply. So, any questions before we start with the law of sines? Keep my chat box open here. Oh, took care of those others. All right, so law of sines. So there are two scenarios for the law of sines. Scenario one, you have one side and two angles. So notice for the first triangle, you have two angles, one side. Second triangle, you have two angles on the side. So you can use the law of sines if that happens. The other scenario, you have two sides and the angle opposite one of them. So opposite means directly across. Opposite means directly across. So here's one angle and two sides, but the 117-degree angle is directly across from the 12-inch side. So if this scenario happens, then you can use the law of sines. You can use the formula that we're getting ready to use. And here is that formula. Sine A over A equals sine B over B equals sine C over C. So notice that it has three parts. As I mentioned up there, capital letters represent, both say angles. You want to teach math and not English. Capital letters represent angles. Lowercase letters represent sides. But when you are using this formula, you only use two parts at a time. So you will never use three fractions at a time. Only two. So A and B, B and C, or A and C, but never all three at once. So if you're using all three at once, that's a problem. Using all three at once, that's a problem. So Mike, if you're chewing, good. Otherwise, so, before we actually use the formula, we're going to practice the formula. So let's go ahead and check it. Let's go ahead and practice the use of this formula.
Tyler, you're doing too much. Dude, get that and sit down. Y'all making too much noise. All this stuff gets recorded.
Okay, don't put it in. All right. So example one. So example one, we're going to solve for A. So we're solving for a lowercase a. So this is the scenario that you would use when you have to find a side. So this particular type of problem, you have a fraction equal to a fraction, which means you are going to be cross multiplying. So you have a scenario in which you're going to cross multiply. Sine 92 times A equals 16 times the sine of 58. So, once you cross multiply, the sine of 92 is nothing but a number. So since it is nothing but a number, you have a number times a variable. You want to get rid of the number, so you divide it. So you divide the number out. Now the part that's left over, this is a calculator problem. So we're going to let the calculator do some work. So since we are letting the calculator do some work, let's take a brief moment. For my graphing calculator people, make sure your calculator is in degree mode. Simply hit mode, check and make sure it is in degrees. Yes, it is very easy for the calculator to switch modes when you're just throwing it in a book bag or throwing it across the room or whatever the case may be. Check to make sure that it's in degrees. If you have the blue scientific calculator, zero problems on your end. It will stay in degree mode unless you force it out. But we can literally take the problem, take everything and throw it in the calculator, as long as we do it correctly. So we got 16 sine 58 over sine 92. 16 sine 58. Close the parentheses, divided by sine 92. So we have 13.577. The problem told us to round to the nearest hundred. So 13.58. That's it. That's all problems. Again, it's not hard. Making sure you pay attention to what you're doing. Like we're on page 2, bro.
What are you doing? Just staring off into space.
So, example 1 is similar to what you would be doing for finding sides. So let's find the angle. What you doing?
She must have forgot how you that.
No. All right. Solve for B. So, we're solving for capital B. So this is an example of how we would find angles. So again, it's still set up fraction equals fraction, so we're still going to cross multiply. Sine of B times 20. $13 times sine of 54. So we're all set up and ready to go. We need the capital B by itself. So the 20 has to go. So that's a divide out. But we still need to get B by itself. The sign is in the way. So remember from right triangle trade, if you're trying to find an angle, you need to use the inverse. So B equals sine inverse 13 sine 54 over 20. So, any questions on setup before we go to the calculator? We can let the calculator finish this. So we can let the calculator finish this. We just have to be very careful with putting it in. So 13 sine 54 over 20. So we need sine inverse. So we hit second sine inverse. 13 sine 54. Make sure you close the parentheses. Divided by 20. So I put another parentheses, because sine inverse had a parentheses on it. Enter. So of course I threw everything in all at once. 31.7. So it's an angle. Go to the nearest whole number. 32 degrees. So 32 degrees. So this is the procedure for when we get to finding angles, which we will use shortly. So questions, 1 or 2? Huh? Blue calculator probably a little bit better than that one. All right. So let's find sides. We'll do one together, you try one yourself. So if we're finding a missing side from the triangle, first step is to label it. So remember, labeling it, A angle, A side. A side is directly across from it. B angle, B side, C angle, C side. First step, get it labeled. We're looking for side AB. So we're looking for this side here. It has the labeling of C on it. So if we look at the formula, that means we have to use that part of the formula. We have to use that since that's what's missing. So one part of our formula is going to be sine of 20 over C. Remember, capital C is the angle, so that's why the 20 went in. The sine is the lowercase letter, it's C. But now we need another fraction. The other fraction is an angle side combination that we know. So I can't use angle A and side A because I don't know what any of them are. So I don't know either one of them, I can't use it. I have angle B and I have side B. So there's your other fraction. So, any questions before we go to solve that? Sure, 5 in here are okay. My 20 at home are okay. So let's solve out. So just like we did up above, we cross multiply. So we have sine of 20 times 27. And then C times sine of 29. So again, this problem is not that much different than example 1. Divide both sides by the sine of 29. equals 27 sine 20 over sine 29. So now we let the calculator do that work. 27 sine 20 divided by sine 29. Should I put it in right? $19.047, so 19.05. It is in feet. I personally am not concerned about the units. So, some people might be wondering, well, why did you go to 3 decimal places with right triangles, but 2 decimal places now? Because I was following directions. So I just totally go to 2 decimal places. So, any questions on example 3? Before I give you the head start on 4. Example 3 before you get the head start on 4. All right, so let's pause, Mark. All right, so example 4. As we solve this problem, so remember, A angle, A side, B angle, B side, C angle, C side. First thing is label it. So we're missing side BC. Well, that's the one that they want. So we need to use the A component of the formula. So angle is 75 degrees at A, so sine 75 over A. So we need another fraction to pair off with it. So we have 29 feet, but we don't have the B angle. But you can find the B angle. You got 2 angles. Last time I checked, all 3 angles in a triangle is going to add up to 180. So 75 and 16 is 91. 180 minus 91, will gives you 89. That's an 89 degree angle. So we're going to have to use 89 degrees. So we use 89 degrees. So sometimes you're going to have to use that little rule from geometry that all 3 angles in a triangle have to add up to 180. You don't have to be told to do it. You just need to go and do it. So there's our setup. Now that we have our setup, everything else works the way it's supposed to work. 29 times sine of 75. A times sine of 89. You need A by itself. Divide it. A equals 29 sine of 75 over sine of 89. So we let the calculator do its work. I can use this calculator. This calculator. It'll give me what I need. They got 28.0 0.016, so 28.02. I mean, he was right on the money. Right on the money. Purple passions in the house. Questions 3 or 4? My second favorite phone. It has to be. My first name is Frank. Purple Rain.
This is like I have Alzheimer's. Girl, because nobody.
Any questions at home? Example 3 and 4.
This is logo.
That is correct. So if you have 2 angles and you want to find the third one because you don't know if you're going to have to use it, that's okay. Some people just do it out of force of habit, but you only have to find that angle if it corresponds to a side and you're going to have to use it. But if you're not going to need to use it, then you don't have to find it.
This word from?
All right, let's find side, find angles. So angles use a fairly similar setup, but since we're finding an angle, that means sine inverse is going to come into play at some point. So, example 5, we're looking for angle A. First step is still the same. A angle A side, B angle B side, C angle C side. So since you're finding angle A, you've got to use that part of the formula. Sine A, 12. We need another angle side combination. So we know angle B, we know side B. So let's go ahead and use that combination. Sine 89 over 24. Sine 89 over 24. Again, primary things, get your setup. Once we get our setup, solving is the easy part. Multiply. Sine of A times 24. That's 24 sine A equals 12 and sine 89. 12 times the sine of 89. Again, you're looking for an angle. You first have to divide out 24. You cannot take sine inverse if there's a number sitting in front. Sine A equals 12 sine 89 over 24. You can't find an angle until you do the inverse. Sine inverse 12 sine 89 over 24. So now let's just let the calculator do the rest of the work. You should get 30 degrees.
Okay, 30.
Yep, you should get 30. So second sine inverse 12 sine of
89.
89
over 24. Close parentheses divided by 24. 29.99, 30 degrees. So angle A is 30 degrees. And please make sure you put the parentheses in the right place when you are dividing out, putting in the calculator. That's the easiest way to make a mistake. Any questions? Example 5 before you try 6 yourself. All right, so quarter run. So, as you can see, I've already labeled it. So we're looking for the B angle. So if we set it up like every other problem, that means we should be setting up sine of B over B. But that's not really going to help you because you don't know either part. So that means you're going to have to find sine angle C first and then use it to get angle B. So this can't help you. We're just going to get rid of that. Angle A and side A, you already know. So you can set up that fraction. You know side C, so you're going to have to find angle C first. So you're going to solve the problem indirectly. So you first got to get angle C and then use it to get angle B. Cross multiply. And if you have the question, make sure you ask. Ultimately, you have to know how to solve it yourself. Divide by 22. That gives you sine C equals 13 sine 109 over 22. I need to know what angle C is, so sine drops out. C equals sine inverse 13 sine 109 over 22. So if you solve that out, you should get 34 degrees. Which I'm confident most people got. And then we're wondering, well, why didn't my answer come out to be 37? That's C. We were looking for B. So that's 34 degrees. 2 angles in a triangle. 3 of them add up to 180. So 109 plus 34. 180 minus 143 gives you 37 degrees, which is what you wanted. Now, you've done hard stuff. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Done hard stuff in this class. Any questions before we check out the word problem? We're not going to always solve it out, but the setup is what you need. All right, so this problem is about the Bermuda Triangle, which, if you've never been to Bermuda, it's probably a beautiful place. I will probably never go there because I don't want my plane to disappear. It is a region in the Atlantic Ocean between Bermuda, Miami, Florida, and San Juan, Puerto Rico. So I've been to the other two, I just haven't been to Bermuda. So.
Wait, why would you get lost? Because of his work?
No.
What are you talking about? What?
So it doesn't get lost because of the word problem. Throughout history, there have been a lot of ships and a lot of planes who have flown into the Bermuda Triangle or went into the Bermuda Triangle and never came back. Disappeared. Why? Don't know. Couldn't tell you.
That's not cool.
So you have Miami, Florida. You got Bermuda. You got San Juan, Puerto Rico.
How are you talking about one?
Now, you're not supposed to know where all three of those are. I'm literally copying the picture that's in page 820 of your book. I know where those three things are because I've studied maps since I was in 8th grade. So, Miami has an angle of 53 degrees with Bermuda. Between Bermuda and San Juan is 965 miles. Miami and San Juan, 1,038 miles. So again, the same drawing is on page 820 of your book. So no, I'm not making it up off the top of my head. I'm not that good. I'm good. I'm getting wrong, but I'm not that good.
Okay. He didn't even have to say the word. Oh. I'm good.
So, notice every other triangle was labeled A, B, C. This one isn't. So label it A, B, C. So that means there's your A side, there's your B side, there's your C side. So when you set up everything, if they're looking for, hey,
Special delivery for Mr. Lowe.
Oh, that's my life.
hey,
It's not for me.
somebody like, darn,
I'm just the messenger, you know?
oh, thanks. What is the angle made at Bermuda? So that means you're looking for angle B. Find the distance between Miami and Bermuda. So Miami and Bermuda, you're looking for side C. So obviously, we're not going to solve it out now. You only have 2 minutes left in class. But angle B is like examples 3 and 4. Side C, just like examples 1 and 2. So the word problem is not hard. For that person questioning, oh my God, we're doing word problems. It's not that hard. You just got to figure out how to set it up. Once it's set up, solving it out part's easy. So, any questions, law, signs before we close on out?